You're now listening to the Fullerton Unfiltered podcast. Straightforward, no nonsense business advice. Completely unfiltered. Grow your business. Grow your life. Now, here's your host, Brian Fullerton.
Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Brian Fullerton here. Welcome to another episode of the Fullerton Unfiltered podcast. Thanks so much for joining in with us. Can't wait to break down this episode here. We got a really special topic, something a little bit more unique, a little bit more niche that we haven't really talked about on this show yet, and still a little bit of mystery out there in the cosmos, and that is dealing with mosquito control and poison ivy control. We have just a really good person I've got to befriend over the last 6 to 12, maybe 18 months, and that is Austin with Ditch the Itch, that is based out of here in mid-Michigan. So Austin, welcome to the show, brother. How you doing?
Thanks for having me, Brian. I appreciate the opportunity to talk and share some knowledge.
Absolutely, man. Well, you and I, we've got to know each other for, like I said, a little over probably a year and a half. You were actually at our live event last year, which is super cool. And you were just literally over at my house about 2 weeks ago at the time of this recording, hanging with Paul Jameson. And you guys got to talk a little bit more about mosquito control and poison ivy control, which is your specialty and your niche. And, honestly, Austin, like not a lot of guys offer either service. Not a lot of guys know too much about those services. And from what you've been telling me is that they're actually pretty profitable and you've been doing pretty good with it. So let's do this, man. Why don't you bring these guys up to speed if they don't know who you are? Maybe give them a minute or two background on you and, how you got in the industry, what you're doing right now, and then kind of what your business looks like and what you've been up to the last 12, 18 months with Ditch the Itch.
Absolutely, man. So my backstory starts when I was 13 years old. I started working in the commercial greenhouse and nursery industry. Pretty much after high school, I'd go there. I'd learn to love plants, learn to just love the industry in general. And since then, I've had about 15 years in the commercial greenhouse and industry. Right now, I also work part-time at a very large commercial greenhouse and nursery up here in mid-Michigan around Grand Blanc. I won't say the name out of respect, but
yeah.
They have me in charge of potting the trees and shrubs there, which is a huge, huge facility, and it's very cool to watch. I have about 6 years experience working in the pest control industry, and actually I worked for my former competitor for about 5.5 years of that.
Okay.
So I got my knowledge of doing one niche, the poison ivy control, from that company, and then I kind of saw this market to where you could do both. Why wouldn't you do both? Because then you could treat, mosquitoes as a cash flow thing, like mowing the lawn. There's a schedule that you have to rotate on. And then the bigger monies and, the poison ivy control, that's my bigger ticket item. So that's kind of my background. I'm a plant geek and a plant nerd. I love walking through the woods.
Dude, that's awesome, bro. Yeah. Married, kids, or what's the rest of your married status?
I am married, happily married to a beautiful Mexican woman,
yes.
And we are expecting our first baby here the late December, early January. She's actually going in for her 20-week ultrasound next Friday.
That's awesome, man. Congratulations, dude.
Thank you.
Do they know the sex of the baby yet, or is that like what they find out, or where's that timeline? Help me out.
We are having a baby boy.
Yeah, there you go.
We found that out actually a couple months ago. It's kind of amazing how quickly they can find out.
Wow.
But a baby boy's on the way, so hopefully I'll have a little guy to take over the business in the future.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Somebody to bump knucks and hang out with, and that's awesome.
Oh yeah.
That's so cool, dude. Good for you. Well, Liz and I, we love to start a family here. What do they say, Austin? Like trying to not try to not try. One of those deals. So we'll see what
it's Brian. It's all in God's hands at that point. You just let it happen, and it happens, and it's a blessing no matter what or when.
Yeah, amen. Well, I was going to go down a rabbit hole, but this one would probably get me in trouble, so I'll just keep it PG, and keep it Disney. But yeah, we're super excited about that phase of our life, and it's funny because like I told Liz, I go, like our life is about to be entirely different. Like we just closed on the land. We're about to start building a home in the next 12 months. And if we have a newborn, right, in the next 9, 12, 18 months, whatever, I'm like, it's going to be a lot of firsts and a lot of changes, right? And So we're gearing up for. I keep laughing. I'm like, this is why I got to make more money. She's like, why? I'm like, because there's going to be so many unknowns, and it's just going to be hemorrhaging club again, And so
Absolutely.
I can't wait, man. But good for you guys, dude. I'm so excited. Do you guys want to have a bigger family, smaller family, or any ideas what you guys are trying to do?
Well, I will say this, okay? If you've ever met a Mexican family, they're gigantic.
Typically,
and it's pretty much Mexican families are Catholic, and Catholic, you have big families.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
She has 5 other brothers and sisters, and then her mom and dad came from, I think, families of 6 or 9 or something like that. So
wow.
More than likely, there will be some big families. The Douglas clan will grow.
That's awesome, dude. Heck yeah, man. Well, good for you guys, man. It'll be fun watching you guys grow and build your family as the next handful of years, and that's really, really exciting, man. Well, the today's show, we're going to be talking about poison ivy control, mosquito control. I know a little bit more about it now because you and I have done a couple coaching calls, and we're able to catch up a little bit about what you're doing. And I just think it's super intriguing, super fascinating. There's a lot of money to be made in it. And so I said, well, Austin, I know this is your world and you think everybody knows all about it, but I said, honestly, dude, probably 1% of my audience knows about these 2 opportunities that have really kind of hit the market and hit our industry by storm the last, I'd say 5 or 10 years. Now, there's always the argument this has been around for 20 or 30 years, but I think what you're doing and the way you're approaching it is super smart and super niche. And so what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit more about those couple industries, those couple niches, and hear your thoughts about how to maybe upsell this service if somebody wants to get involved with it. So let's do this. Let's take a quick minute here. We're going to hear from our show sponsors, Catch Your Breath, and then we're going to jump right back into Austin's story.
Congratulations, Austin, and to Austin's wife, who's the one that's going to be doing all the hard work on their upcoming birth of their baby boy. Hi there, it's Mr. Producer. Brian briefly touched on one-on-one coaching calls. I encourage you to connect with the team here at Fullerton Unfiltered by visiting LaunchpreneurAcademy.com. Over the last few years, Brian's fielded hundreds, possibly thousands of questions, helping people just like you grow your business. Maybe you've got a question about some equipment purchases, or you want to know how to grow your branding and social media presence. Maybe the company has just plateaued. You need to get new customers, or you need to figure out what is the next move for that next layer, that next level of growth. Then set up your coaching call today. Now, as you can imagine, Brian does quite a few of these every week, so it's important that you get on the schedule now at LaunchpreneurAcademy.com.
At Exmark, we've poured decades of leading-edge engineering and old-fashioned work ethic into our Laser Z, the pioneering commercial zero-turn rider more landscape pros trust. So now you can experience cut quality, performance, comfort, durability, and reliability beyond your wildest dreams. Stop by your local dealer or visit Exmark.com to experience an Exmark Laser Z and the attractive financing offers available now.
We're talking lawns, lessons, and life. It's the Fullerton Unfiltered Podcast. Here's Brian.
Awesome, guys. Well, cool deal. We'll always appreciate the show sponsors and you guys supporting the show sponsors. It does go a long way to keeping the lights on and bringing all this great content to you guys, which we really appreciate and love to do, to be honest with you. So, all right. So, Austin, let's go back to your story. You said you work right now for a large greenhouse and planting, company and business. Actually, you told me the name a while ago, and it's like the biggest in what we in our state, which is really cool. But so let's go before we jump into the whole mosquitoes and the poison ivy control. What do you do day to day? So you still work a full-time job, and now you have this part-time business. So what are you doing again during the day? You said planting and shrub maintenance, or what do you do?
Absolutely. So originally I was working seasonally for them. I would work in the springtime and in the fall time. And the springtime is our planting season. So we would get tractor trailer loads full of bare root trees and shrubs. We would prune those down, and then we would also pot them. And that's about a 2.5 month endeavor. This year was actually kind of strange, as we all know, with the whole COVID thing. They actually cut their order in half because they didn't know if they were going to be able to open, be able to sell. So we had a lot less material that we had to pot and prune.
Okay.
But typically we do that for about a month and a half. Or 2 months and a half. I'm sorry. And then we pretty much put them out in the field, and then the grower over there, who's been a big mentor to me, he takes care of them, and we do these small projects throughout the field. We make sure that there's no diseases, no pests. constantly inspecting, constantly moving stuff, shipping stuff to all the stores. It's quite an operation. I'm not going to lie. They do quite well for themselves.
How many trees or shrubs do you guys plant? Like 5,000, 50,000, 100? I mean, how many do you guys plant?
I think every year we pot probably 4,000 to 6,000 trees, and we do about 50,000 shrubs every spring.
Crap. Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty substantial, especially, I get to see all these, landscape plants, which helps me in my business because when I go to the landscape to inspect for poison ivy or anything, I can see what's there. Mm-hmm. And it's an added value for the customer because I know that I can spot diseases and certain pests and inform them of that.
Okay.
So it's a very symbiotic relationship I have with working for that commercial nursery and then also doing what I do.
Yeah. Well, we have a local nursery here. I'm sure you know the name, Malark Nursery, and just some of the best people there, dude. Like the nicest people. I don't know if like the family's Malark, but I think so. And Bedell and Brandon with Envision, they introduced me to those guys. I don't know, 3-4 years ago, and it was cool because I honestly never really been to a nursery. I don't do a lot of plantings. I don't do a lot of landscape installs. And so it was really cool to just ride on the gator, with the flatbed, and we were zipping around picking out like hydrangea, like trees, these black-eyed Susans, a little bit of this, a little bit of that when we redid my mom's property. So Bedell took me with him. That was just a really cool time. And, I'm just blown away at like the knowledge that these people have about all the names, all the Latin names, all like the.
Oh yeah. There's actually a thing in Michigan to become a certified green industry professional. Yeah. And they have different categories to where it's like you can be a nurseryman, landscape design. I think there's a couple others.
Yeah.
But
wow.
in order to become a certified green industry professional and a nurseryman, you actually have to know the Latin names of these plants.
Wow.
Which, you're learning a whole nother language just getting into the plant industry, which is kind of fascinating.
Absolutely. Well, that's why it's always funny because some of you guys know I'm a little bit more businessman. I'm a little bit more salesy. I like running the company. I totally respect those guys. Frankly, I'm a little jealous. I'd love to know all that stuff, but there's only so much time in the day, and me learning like the Latin name of a certain plant isn't going to immediately help my dreams and goals.
No.
But I do love it because I always tell my friend Bedell, I'm like, hey, I want to get your fertilizer books, your core, your 3A, your 3B. I want to learn some of this stuff because I got my own property now and I want to take care of it. And but before, I'm a mow and blow guy. We maintain the property. I know my grass types. I know the weeds. I know certain things in between that make me dangerous. But that's all I really needed for an education. But I always, man, you guys watch Caleb Allman on Instagram, and Caleb's like, that's a forsythia, da. And I'm like, how does he know this stuff? Like he's just so intelligent. And a lot of guys that listen to the show, they eat, sleep, and breathe this kind of stuff. So I always respect it, is what I'm trying to say. And you go to like Malark's nursery, man, and some of these nurseries, these people are incredibly intelligent. I mean, like they know when to water, when to feed, when to prune, when to everything, right? And I'm just like,
absolutely. You have to know, this thing in order to sell the quality product to the customer, to the landscape contractor. So that way, when it gets planted, it thrives. It's not just going to die off, and then you lose,
exactly,
your profit margin because you have to go back and then replant something. So it all starts at the nursery on that end into the landscape. But also for me, when I working there, I get the education of the landscape plants, but then there's also a whole spectrum of plants that I have to know in doing my poison ivy work. I have to know all the plants that are native, all the plants that are invasive. There's times where customers are like, what's this? And then I have to tell them, so it's what my niche in the poison ivy control industry is really, you have to be, this hybrid of a landscaper to a lawn guy to a guy that works at a nursery. You have to know all these plants. Otherwise, the customer's going to look at you like, I called you.
Mm-hmm.
You might not know what you're doing.
Absolutely. That's a great point with landscaping, man. Like you got to know your stuff. And I always tell people, like, you got to know your brick pavers. You got to know when to dig, how deep to dig, the proper ways of planting. There's a lot of unknowns in landscaping. And I get it. Some of you guys, you just rip out the front, you add a little two brick layer retaining wall type deal, and you throw in a couple plants that look aesthetically pleasing. Sure. But there's also stuff that, and again, I super respect this stuff, like horticulturalists and like you said, all these plant care specialists. They're like, well, you got to plant this with this soil because of the pH, and this with alkalinity, and this with it's cohesive, and this plant doesn't get pissed off at this plant, and this plant, and I'm like, how do you know this stuff? And I love it. I really, really do. If somebody ever makes a YouTube channel about all this stuff, holla at your boy, because I will definitely repost that and share that, because that's like the cool stuff, man. I'm always wondering, like, again, I lean on my friends and other peers, my friend Mike, and there's times where I go to a job site and he goes to a job site. And I'm like, well, let's do this, this, and this. He goes, or if I could make a suggestion, let's do this, this, and this. And I'm like, why or how? And he like gives me the label.
Yeah, the why behind the why is very important.
Exactly, dude. And again, I've always just respected his opinion, and then sometimes my friend Mike, Mike, if you listen, he goes like way detail, and I'm like, okay, like how much do I need to know to be dangerous? What do we need to do? And he's like, well, just do this, this, and this. I'm like, all right, cool. So I'm still learning, bro. Like, here's the thing, guys. I've been doing this for 14, 15 years, and look, I know I joke on my videos where I call everything a maple tree or an oak tree or a rhododendron, Like, I'm like, I get it. I know I'm being a butthead, but don't think that I don't care or that I don't respect these guys, because I really do. How did you get that role or that job? Was this like a part-time like summer gig, 8-9 years ago, and then you kind of graduated through the ranks, or was this just something you kind of walked into, or how did you get started at that position?
So when I walked into that nursery to get a job, I was just a laborer. They put me in to fill a position, do a job.
Cool.
That didn't require much thinking. And then they realized that, I had more potential. So I started to move up. I went from being a typical laborer to a supervisor that was supervising all of the hanging baskets to be shipped out, which I remember days where we would pull down about 1,000 to 2,000 baskets to ship out. Those are around Memorial Day. So quite a bit. I was running a crew of about 6 guys, and then they asked me if I would like to be promoted to pot the trees and shrubs. And I actually met with the grower and sat down with him over some chicken wings and talked about it. And I said I'd do it. And actually, he's a huge influence to why I stayed with that position, because he got me to love trees and shrubs.
Okay.
If I can plug him, he's a Black Metal Silvis on Instagram. He's an extremely intelligent tree and shrub grower.
What's the Instagram one more time? Black
Metal Silvis.
METAL, and then you have to send it to me, and we'll make sure to plug that in the show notes, because I'm always
absolutely.
I love listening and like following other guys. Like Caleb, he'll have 20 Instagram stories a day, and I'm like, I'm like, man, this guy lives on his phone, and the irony, right? And
yeah, well, this guy's a total nerd when it comes to the insects that you find on your trees and shrubs, your diseases, your viruses, everything else, and it's intriguing. He makes me want to learn more in my profession.
Absolutely,
so,
dude.
A big thank you to him as a mentor.
Absolutely, dude. I mean, we'll get him on the show one day if he can add value to these guys. I mean, Keith Kalfas has a friend, Dan Mirval, I think it is. And
yeah, Dan's awesome.
Yeah, I've watched Dan all the time, dude. Like on Instagram and YouTube. I'm like, this guy. I mean, like, he's like Mother Gaia. You know what I'm saying? Like, he is one with the plants, and the plants are one with him. But he's a good dude. He's a super smart dude. And I want to do some videos with him coming towards fall and pruning season, because he just seems like he's like a certified arborist. He's like the president of like the arborist group. And
he's the tree police, man. He's the guy that tells you when you're doing stuff wrong.
Yeah, Lord knows I've made some bad cuts and some bad prunes in my day.
Haven't we all?
Yeah. Well, some of y'all that have been with me on the YouTube channel for a while know that I kind of had a little debacle about 4 years ago, and we fixed it. We cleaned it up, thanks to Mike. But that video is not public anymore. But that's a whole nother story. Oh man. So all right, well let's get into it, man, because a lot of these guys they cut grass all day, they landscape all day, and then lately the last like 5-10 years, like we've seen like. There's 2 oars in the water. I want to make sure we both give enough time to both of them. So one's the mosquito control, one's the poison ivy control, and I'll let you take it away, because you'll know what to tell me and what makes most sense for each one, right? But the I've been seeing a lot of like the Mosquito Joe, and like the mosquito franchise.
Yeah, the typical franchise company that's out there.
Yep.
They're they pretty much dominate. I forget when they were actually established, but they have taken over by storm, and they're pretty much in every state.
Yeah. Well, they've created a whole like new niche, a whole new industry. I mean, I'm sure mosquito control has been around for, like I said, 20 or 30 years, but there's no way you can turn your head anywhere in Michigan right now and not see a banner ad, a billboard on the highway, a yard sign in somebody's property that says like, have a backyard barbecue with no mosquitoes or whatever, right? And so what's the mosquito control thing? Because I see all these new backpack sprayers with the tank on them. Why don't you take it away? Let these guys know. I mean, just the lay of the land, bro. How do they get into it? The products,
Absolutely.
The pricing. Go for it, man. It's all you.
So with pesticide control, typically you need a license to get started. Okay, here in Michigan, you have to have a certified applicator license.
Okay,
and you have to have 2 years experience working for a company with that license. And there's various categories that you can get into.
Mm-hmm.
Here in Michigan, we have a category that's specifically mosquitoes.
Okay.
So you would have to take a test. You'd have to take the core, which you know about from your True Green experience, and then you'd also have to take your categories. So you got to take your categories, learn the mosquitoes, learn the best practices.
Mm-hmm.
Once you get that, okay, then if you were to create a company, you would need a pesticide business license, which
Yep.
these are all things that, in the beginning of me doing this, I knew that I needed a license to spray, but I didn't know I needed a business license to apply pesticides in Michigan. So that's something that's very specific to each state, and people need to, look into if they choose to enter this realm.
Yeah, I was going to butt in. We just had Joseph DePace on the show, just probably a couple episodes before this one. And so you can have an applicator's license, but then you also need the business license, the pesticide license, if you're running a business. And I think Joseph said you need like 2 years working experience, working for somebody else, or like a equivalent 4 years bachelor degree. And then there's licensing. You have to go through your state. So like we're talking pesticide applications and herbicide and all these different products and chemicals, guys. Like it's a real thing. Like you gotta don't just grab a spreader and start throwing down herbicide. Okay, let's not do that. Let's make sure that we're not the chuck in the truck and we're doing it right. So I just want to take 10 seconds, little butt in there, and say, hey, when you're dealing with chemicals and all this stuff, like you can get people sick, you can poison things, you can, up here in Michigan, everybody's really antsy because we got like 1,000 different little lakes, So let's just make sure that we're doing things correctly. But all right, go ahead, Austin, take it away.
Absolutely. So on that note, the label is always the law.
Yep.
So if you're ever going to apply something, make sure you read the label, use the proper PPE, things like that.
Love it.
Now, if we want to jump into, applying and actually doing the physical work of mosquito control, the best practices out there are actually larviciding, which larviciding is basically you have these pesticides that you apply to where the larva would be. So with mosquitoes, they are in standing water. So if you have bird baths on the property or pools that are in disarray or tires or wherever, you would want to apply a larvicide so that way you can, eliminate the larva. You're basically wiping out the next wave of mosquitoes.
Okay.
And the best practice to do that would actually be, there's a bacteria out there called Bacillus thuringiensis, and there's specific strains that do specific things. And there's one that actually targets mosquito larvae only. And that is the absolute best practice that you could do when doing mosquito control.
Okay.
Personally, I cannot do that because I don't have 2 years experience larviciding. So I didn't know that when I went to apply for my business license and for, all of that I didn't have that experience, so I couldn't do it. And so now I'm restricted to where I can only use adulticides, which adulticides are the chemicals that are pretty much on contact killers. They're what you see the guys out there with the steel backpack blowers, spraying the properties, and it's pretty much knocking the mosquitoes down immediately.
Okay.
So that's the best practices. Again, always read the label. And if you want to dive into equipment, when I started my business, I just had a steel, an SR 450, which is essentially a 450 leaf blower with a tank on top that's gravity fed down into the tip of the tube. And I thought that was all I was going to need. It was the most efficient. It could just hammer out a ton of product and do wonderful things. But then I started to realize that, there's properties that are smaller, tighter, and the neighbors are closer. And so that was actually too powerful. So I needed to invest in a battery backpack sprayer, which led me down that whole road because now that's actually becoming very common. There's a lot of different brands and a lot of different features. There's variable pumps. There's one single pressure pump. There's a whole line of things to go down with that.
Mm-hmm. What do you use? Like there's Sprayer Plus, there's like the Milwaukee Change Out, Pack Out, type backpacks. What the ones that Ballard sells, the different diaphragms, like you said, there's the Steels, the Echoes. What anything that you've found particularly works well for you guys?
Well, I have 3, and the original one that I started with, I'm an affiliate of AM Leonard.
Oh, yeah.
And I tried their backpack sprayer, which, as far as the spraying goes, is phenomenal. But whoever designed the actual harness system needs to redesign it. I'll leave it at that. It's not the most comfortable sprayer out there.
Do you have a code? Do you have a code, by the way?
Yeah, Itch Free 10 saves you 10% at AM Leonard.
So ITCH free, Itch Free.
Yep, Itch Free 10.
Hey, why not, man? Shameless plug, right? Whatever. We're all trying to save.
Yeah,
money,
right. Shameless. But I mean, that sprayer, I believe, is like $395. So when you're talking 10%, you're literally saving $40 on it.
Amen. Amen to that. Yeah, we'll take that.
Yeah, but the sprayer itself is phenomenal. Works great. Battery lasts a long time. It's like 2 hours. But then I, on my Poison Ivy end, I also wanted battery backpack sprayers for large acreage. So I went to a Tractor Supply one day to pick up something, and then I found a Chapin, which is a very known brand in the spray industry, and I picked that up. And then I found the flaw with that was that it was only one pressure. So it's like, okay, there's got to be something that has, the comfort that I want and a variable pressure system to where it can be, spray and pray, or very, very, tight and concise and snipering these plants. And I ended up finding the Flow Zone, which is a phenomenal product. Actually, the backpack harness is almost more comfortable than a leaf blower, which is very surprising.
Okay.
Because when you have 4 gallons on your back, that's 25 pounds. The steel blower alone, without any liquid in it, is probably 26, 27 pounds plus 3 gallons of water. So you're carrying around 50 pounds on your back.
Yeah. Wow.
It's not the easiest. You do have to be somewhat fit to do it.
I like
there's all of that.
You gotta bake that in there. You know what I'm saying? Like this, you gotta be strong and fit, and this ladies' man, like Austin, right? No, I'm just kidding.
No.
I'm just messing, bro. It's just funny when guys say stuff like that. He's like, you gotta be fit. I'm like, oh yeah. Like, come on, man, I can do this thing. No, I'm just messing, bro. Well, let me ask you this: what's the pitch like for the mosquito control? Like, if somebody wants to sign up, and this is a new service, is this like, hey, we'll never have a mosquito on the property again? Is it like you can enjoy your outdoor living space? What's like the typical customer that calls you? What are they looking for, if you don't mind me asking, just to give the big context to all this?
Absolutely. So I always tell a customer that I cannot 100% eliminate every single mosquito.
Sure.
When you go down those franchise routes and you look at their websites, they will say no mosquitoes guaranteed or will come back, which to me, that's not the trajectory you want to go, because you want to be real.
Yeah.
And the reality is that you can greatly reduce the population, but you'll never get rid of it.
Right.
Unless we blanket spray the entire country, which I don't think we're ever going to do.
No.
You'll never get rid of it.
I mean,
so
they do that with
what it is.
They do that with chemtrails, but we're not doing it with mosquito control. So
no.
I'm just messing. Sorry.
Although they tried to do that, I don't know if you remember last year there was a Eastern equine encephalitis outbreak, which is a very, very deadly mosquito-borne disease. That was out in the west side of the state over in Kalamazoo.
Yeah,
and they actually brought in a company from Chicago that used, I believe it was crop dusting planes, and they did about like a 2.5 mile radius. That's pretty big.
That stuff's no joke, bro. I was in Columbus, Ohio when they did something like that. I don't remember what they were spraying for, but the whole city straight up had a warning that we were visiting some friends, and they said, do not go outside on Saturday, whatever day it was. Well, we were leaving for a road trip, and we basically, like, the day of, they sprayed, and we got down there a couple hours later. Well, somehow it made it into like the house through the air and the insulation or whatever. And
oh no!
Yeah, my buddy's girl, she broke out in like crazy hives. Like, dude, you should go to the hospital. And she like crushed like three Benadryls and all this topical stuff. I don't even know. And it came under control after about 3 or 4 hours. But dude, like. Yeah, I always get wary about stuff like that, man. I'm like, I'm not even gonna get into it. We'll go down a whole different rabbit hole, but I don't like it.
Yeah, well, that's the whole protection point. So when you read the label, it tells you what you need. So mine, it tells me I need an organic respirator, and I use a full face organic respirator made by 3M, which
Okay.
are very difficult to come by now because they switched all their manufacturing to these N95 masks.
Oh, sure.
So,
Sure. Yeah. That makes sense.
I'm glad I had that at the beginning of the season. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to offer that service this year.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Fair
But
enough.
you need to wear your PPE when you do it, and you need to, tell your customers, hey, stay inside. And, if they go outside, I don't know what to tell them. That's why you need your disclaimers. You need all these instructions, things like that to save you.
Yeah. Well,
for anything that can happen with that.
Well, explain to these guys why, because you were educating me a couple of weeks ago, remember? And you were like, well, and I'm like, well, that some things can affect humans, some things can't. But you were saying like the bone structure or like the neurological aspects.
Yeah.
Like,
so
help me
so
out.
a lot of these adulticides, when you get into like the pyrethroids, which pyrethroids are synthetic permethrin. Permethrin's an extract from a chrysanthemum flower. So basically, they took that same chemical compound and they made it into a lab. And that's pretty much majority of the adulticides that people are using out there to spray for mosquitoes. So when you go down that route, what that does, there's mode of actions when it comes to these adulticides or insect growth regulators.
Okay.
And so insects and humans are actually closer related than plants. So you could have an adulticide that affects the
Nervous
endocrine system. No, the endocrine system.
Okay.
And so if it affects them, it can also affect you when it absorbs it. You have to be super careful because these things can affect you very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
You can get toxic poisoning from it if you're inhaling it. If you spill some on you, we are very closely related to insects, and we need to respect that.
Mm-hmm.
Which in reality, I would love to see us not use these synthetic pyrethroids because that's also contributing to an insect decline. So that's why you got to look into organic methods if at all possible.
Okay.
Which is why you go back to what I said about the organic bacteria larvicide. If you can do that and maintain the mosquito population at a much lower level, then it prevents you from applying all of these synthetic pesticides that are also killing other insects.
Okay, fair enough. Well, and that's some things that I know it sounds kind of remedial, but insects aren't bad. Like spiders and bees. Like without bees and pollination, the world would literally not have a food source. Basically, how I understand it. And
unless Elon Musk made a whole bunch of drone bees. But we'll wait for that to happen.
Oh, he's busy creating AI and Neuralink, which is that guy is a genius, bro. He's like a real life Tony Stark, Well, okay. Well, let's go back to the product offering. So how do you sell and offer this? Because I just like True Green says, like nobody can guarantee a weed free lawn, although we 99.9 is what we try to aim for. So does somebody call you out and what's like a typical application or price? And then how many rounds or applications in a season do you guys do for mosquito control? What does that all look like?
Right. So that would all depend on how the spring goes, how warm it is, basically the degree days. You follow the degree days with plants and weeds. A lot of the guys that are in the fertilizer industry and weed control industry would understand that. But you follow the same thing with mosquitoes because once it gets to a certain temperature, those mosquitoes are going to start hatching and flying and then also breeding. Okay. So my season starts pretty much the last week of April to the first week of May for mosquitoes. Okay. And then we would go all the way into September. I don't spray into October because the temperatures are coming down. They're starting to go away naturally due to frost, temperature change, things like that. We're bundling up. We're not being outside as much, things like that. Okay. But a guy in the southern states, he could be doing this year round. Wow. Year round application would be awesome because it's constant cash flow. Yeah. But typically what I do is I try and keep my customer with a 2-acre or less property, and I want to be able to finish the application in 20 minutes or less. And in that application, I'm probably treating, 20,000 to 15,000 square feet. And, I pretty much charge them $65 every application. Okay. Okay. The sell of it is what I tell them. I say, enjoy your summer itch free. Basically from my feedback of my customers, when it's time for me to come back is when they're starting to get bit. Yep. So around, I do a 21-day cycle. So every 21 days, I'm back at that property treating. And, that's in coordination with the label and the rates of what you're using. Okay. But, on day 18, 19, there's mosquitoes coming back, and they notice it, and they know, oh, Austin's coming. He's coming to make sure that we can enjoy our summer. It's free.
Wow. So how many?
Like I said originally, I don't guarantee 100% gone, but I guarantee that I can reduce it enough to where you can enjoy being outside.
Yeah. How many applications do you do in a season? Like 4 or 5 then? If you're wrapping up around September? What's a typical season?
I think it comes around to 6 or 7.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, yeah, a little bit more frequent then. That makes sense. I know fertilizer, a lot of guys are like every 25 to 35 days or something like that. So that's really, really cool. I know for some of these guys that want to, supplement their income. I mean, again, we always talk about if you got 100 or 200 or 500 customers, I mean, you don't have to just always get more customers. I did a podcast episode with Stanley on the Disruptors podcast with LMN. And I said, like, you can go vertical and get more customers, or you could just go horizontal and offer more services. And a lot of you guys, you have 100 customers. And if you're like, man, I need to make more money. Well, offer them more services, man. Like, you can go do fertilizer and treatments. That's cool. You can go build retaining walls and brick pavers. That's cool. I think a really good way to, tap into that same couple hundred clients that you have is offer, mosquito control. I mean, it's, from what I understand, it's pretty profitable. We'll maybe break down some of those numbers toward the end, but I know, Austin, you were telling me that there's some great margins in there, and it's a great way to, I mean, look, guys, if you got 100 customers, I have to believe that 90% of them want less mosquitoes. You know what I mean? It's not a hard.
Well, that's the thing too, Brian, is that earlier in the podcast we were talking about how people might not have thought about doing mosquito control or poison ivy, but it's something that really affects us all. I don't know a single person on the planet that hasn't been bit by a mosquito.
Exactly. Well, and here's the thing, dude. I hate mosquitoes. Like, you want to talk about top 2, 3, 4 things in life that I hate the most? Mosquitoes. I'm not just saying it because you're on the podcast. Liz knows I hate mosquitoes. We go to bonfires. The minute it gets dusk, I leave. She's like, the bonfire is just starting. I go, I don't do it. I'll literally be out in full jeans, full long sleeve. I'll have like 3 cans of DEET. I'll be wearing dude, I'm I'm weird, bro. Like I don't like being dirty, which is so ironic. And I don't like getting bit by mosquitoes. We were, no joke, hanging out with Stanley Dirt Monkey and Keith Kalfas and Caleb and at Stanley's cottage, and which was just the most crazy environment ever. There's like a wild bird, there's a flying squirrel, there's a fox, there's like crazy animals. I'm like, this is the weirdest place ever. Stanley, like, he's an awesome dude, but his place is what you see is what you get. And we're outside. It's like 92 degrees out, crazy lightning storm, and I'm in full jeans, full hoodie, full everything. And people are like, are you like comfortable? I go, I don't do mosquitoes, bro. Like, we're on his patio watching a movie, and I don't do mosquitoes, bro. I hate mosquitoes. And I was laughing. I was telling Austin, like, as soon as I get my house and my property built, like, I'm bringing Austin over and I don't care if you crop dust my whole 3 acres, bro. I don't want a single mosquito out there. I don't care how much it is. I don't care. I'm just being honest. I know I'm a little extreme. I'm a little crazy, but I hate mosquitoes, bro, for the life of me. And when I have an outdoor patio, I want to eat and cook and hang out and entertain and go in the pool.
You want to enjoy the outside place that you want to unwind.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
And that's honestly the concept of most of my clients. They want to enjoy the outside.
Amen.
And the feedback has been phenomenal. They come to me and they say, I can actually be outside now. I can cook outside. I can hang out with my wife late night and talk because we work so much. It's amazing what it actually does to the quality of life.
Amen. Well, I was listening to another gentleman on Paul Jameson's podcast. He had a guy that was, I think, a lawn and landscape pro, but he also sprayed mosquito control product, and that was a service that he had offered. And it was super intriguing. I forgive me if he listens to my show and I can't remember his name. Guys, come on, there's 500 podcasts, and I love listening to all of you guys. I'm on my mower, 30 hours a week, just like you guys are. I love listening to these podcasts from Paul and Julio, and you name one, you got to name them all, but you guys know what I'm saying. But I was like, dude, this is so cool, like so intriguing. And I'm like, I can't wait to sign up for a service like that. Well, let's do this. I want to, we're at like 36 minutes. I know we try to keep these around an hour. I want to be respectful of your time too on a Sunday. I want to make sure that we also cover, as equally important, is all the poison ivy control. I think that's a new one that could really benefit a lot of people. So let's do this. Let's take a quick break from our show sponsors. We're going to hear from those guys. I'm going to catch my breath, and then we're going to hear a little bit more from Austin about poison ivy control.
Brian, the reason I remember the episode on Paul's show that you heard was because it aired back around my birthday in late June. I'm almost positive that it was an interview with Vince Dole. Vince Dole, I believe, is the guy's name. Of course, Brian was referring to the Green Industry Podcast with Paul Jameson, one of our recommendations here at Fullerton Unfiltered. We are always grateful to Exmark and their support of the podcast, and we're going to hear from them in just a moment. But first, here's what's still ahead in today's show with our special guest, Austin from Ditch the Itch.
What happens is this vine grows up. It'll be to the very tip of the pole, and it'll start producing seeds like crazy. It'll actually start to grow in the grass through rhizomes and pop up. So you'll be mowing nothing but poison ivy in no time flat.
At Exmark, we've poured decades of leading-edge engineering and old-fashioned work ethic into our Laser Z, the pioneering commercial zero-turn rider more landscape pros trust. So now you can experience cut quality, performance, comfort, durability, and reliability beyond your wildest dreams. Stop by your local dealer or visit exmark.com to experience an Exmark Laser Z and the attractive financing offers available now.
Once again, we send it to the famed Fullerton Unfiltered studio in Novi, Michigan. Here's Brian Fullerton.
Awesome, guys. Well, cool deal. We'll always appreciate the show sponsors, sponsoring the show, helping us to support this thing. And, honestly, guys, thank you so much to you guys that do support the show sponsors as well. Whether it's a Brian's 10 code with some of the affiliates or just shopping those brands like Steel and Exmark and everybody in between, support those guys that support us, because you know what? Without those guys, we definitely wouldn't be able to keep the lights on and keep the show going. And these things take a lot of time and effort, believe it or not. So, all right, well, Austin, let's get back to you with talking about poison ivy control. I think this is a new one that has popped up on the radar again the last maybe 20, 30 years, but definitely the last 4 or 5 years. I've been seeing poison ivy control a lot more often. How did you, again, you're in two really unique niches. I think it's super intriguing. How did you get started in the poison ivy control business?
Actually, a friend referred me to the owner of a company that does it here in Michigan. And okay. I started there and I liked it. I liked interacting with the customers. I liked using my knowledge of plants to kind of wow these customers and clients. And I stuck with that for about 5 years. And then I branched out on my own.
Wow. Okay. So what kind of equipment do you have for the poison ivy? So you do both the mosquito control and the poison ivy control. Do you offer both services to both customers, or is this an entirely different spectrum of customers that have poison ivy?
I do offer it to both customers within a certain range. So okay. Route density, I want to keep the mosquito control closest to my office. Mm-hmm. And then poison ivy, there's a little bit different margin, so I can travel a little bit further. Okay. And actually what I do scheduling wise is having both niches. I schedule my mosquito treatments on 1 week of the month, and that's all that week is. And then the other 3 weeks allows me to do the poison ivy. Okay. And my intention with that is to have a technician that can take that over, and I can fill up a whole month of him doing mosquitoes, and then I can focus on the poison ivy until I can train somebody and carry on. Okay.
Now, what's a typical? Now, one thing that you were telling me earlier, and I thought this was really cool, is that a mosquito control application is, like you said, $65, let's say, for an app. A poison ivy control application, or whatever you guys call it, service or whatever, this can be a couple $100. So can you give guys like the lay of the land? What are you looking for? What is the customer expecting? And then how much are you charging for this service?
Yeah. So honestly, one of the most asked questions when it comes to both services is, can you completely eradicate this and will it never come back? Okay. And the answer to that is no. Right. And sure. With mosquitoes, we talked about that, how they breed and things like that. But with poison ivy, there are these large mature vines that are growing in the woods, producing hundreds, if not thousands of seeds. And poison ivy is relatively unique because it holds on to its seeds all winter long. Most trees and shrubs, that drop their seeds underneath the snowpack, but poison ivy moves around through the birds. So the birds will feed off these vines and move it from here and there. So, if a customer has a beautiful landscape and there's trees and there's birds, which more than likely there is, I can never promise them that they will never have poison ivy again, but I can promise them that the poison ivy they have on their property will be killed. Okay. So when we go down that road, typically for poison ivy, it takes a few trips. It takes a couple applications. You really need to look into a broadleaf or woody stem herbicide. Your average Roundup that the homeowner goes and buys from Home Depot does not work. Mm-hmm. As far as what I would say to the landscapers and lawn guys and things like that, if you're at all thinking about dabbling in this, then you should really get specific with it. Because if you're out there just, kind of being the chuck in the truck, spraying things away, you could really damage the landscape. And maybe you might like that because you'll kill some plants and have to replace them and get paid to do it. or maybe they'll want you to say, hey, you need to replace that because you killed it, and then you lose your profit.
Okay, sure.
So you have to be very specific because these herbicides, you could be working in a very delicate garden for, this multi-millionaire client, and you don't want to damage their landscape. So
Sure.
it takes some precision.
Yep. Well, the poison ivy, it's something that we all have dealt with one way or another. Whether you've been pulling weeds, I remember literally doing a landscape job. We were pulling weeds in this one landscape bed, and I was working for a friend just honestly to make extra income. This was like 5 years ago. His name is Craig. He's got a business in town, and my friend Brandon and I we learned a little bit of landscaping from him. It was just a good little bridge the gap thing for both of us. When my fall cleanups dried up, we were working with him to finish up a small landscape install. And we were cleaning out some weeds in the bed. There was a bunch of lava rock, and underneath this, it's like one of those drooping trees. Again, I don't know my trees. It was like a drooping tree with hard branches. It looked like an umbrella. It had like a bunch of little, poison ivy stalks or stems or tree, little broadleaf trees, whatever. I don't even know, guys. And again, I'm not a landscaper or a tree guy, but I went to go pick it with I had a leather glove on, and Craig goes, whoa. And I go, what's up? He goes, bro, that's poison ivy. I go, I kind of thought it looked a little different, but I didn't know. And he goes, he goes, wear a leather glove, something that you can throw away or wash off or, whatever. He goes, but just be careful with that stuff. He goes, don't mess around. I go, all right. And I guess, like you said, it comes from the birds. Is that how it's mostly transmitted, or?
It is. Once a poison ivy plant latches onto a tree and grows up and becomes mature enough to produce seeds, the birds will fly to those vines, eat the seeds, and then fly and perch in another tree and drop it. And so that's why you see this in the landscape. In the woods, it's pretty common. We all know once you enter the woods, you're entering the territory of, poison ivy and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But, in the landscape, that's why it appears. And people, neglect of their landscape, it can get really out of control really fast.
Okay. And then with poison ivy, I see a lot on telephone poles. I don't know if that's because all the birds. Is that because all the birds are on the wires?
Yep, absolutely. You got it right. And maybe a guy, okay, think you got to think in the past to think to the future. Okay. So a bird was sitting on that utility pole, dropped a seed. Okay. If that area is not maintained very well by the lawn care company, what's going to happen is that plant is going to latch onto that pole and grow up it. So if a guy goes and weed whacks around that very tightly, he's going to prevent that from happening, which in doing so, you're going to prevent the utility guys, the electric guys, the linemen that have to climb that pole and fix stuff from getting poison ivy just by trimming a little bit tighter to the utility poles.
Sure.
But if you don't, what happens is this vine grows up. It'll be to the very tip of the pole, and it'll start producing seeds like crazy. It'll actually start to grow in the grass through rhizomes and pop up. So you'll be mowing nothing but poison ivy in no time flat.
Wow, that's crazy, bro. I never really connected the dots until just now. I was like, that makes a lot of sense. And where we live, it's a wealthier area. I mean, Austin, where we live, and it's like pretty, everything's pretty maintained. And you'll see like all these different telephone poles. Sometimes they'll have poison ivy on them, but dude, once that stuff starts getting out of hand, they'll come through with, I don't know what, maybe you do know, Austin, but they'll just nuke that stuff right out. Because, I mean, they don't want that stuff creeping up the telephone poles for all the line guys like you were just talking about. So that's...
yeah, absolutely. In that instance, what you would do is a cut stump treatment. So you would sever the vine at the base, and then you would poison the stump.
Wow.
The only thing you need to know when doing that is that, you got to make sure that it's not up in the hot wires, because who knows if you can get shocked or anything. I don't know that, and I honestly don't even want to deal with utility poles if it's up into the wires.
Okay. Yep.
But then, if you do decide to do that, you need to know that those tools are now covered in poison ivy oil.
Okay.
And you need to be conscious of that.
Yeah.
So that's really the biggest thing. So you get the homeowner that's out there weeding their garden or whatever. The biggest mistake that the homeowner makes is when they're pulling plants or weeding. They're out there. Same thing with landscape guys, I guess, too. They're out there in shorts, short sleeve shirts, boots, whatever, and they're just rolling in this.
Okay.
When I'm out there, I'm in full pants, full boots, long sleeves, and gloves to protect myself, and I'm conscious that all of my tools are covered with urushiol. So
what is that?
urushiol is the oil within poison ivy, poison sumac, poison oak that gives us the rash. Okay.
Okay.
So I get this too a lot, where a lot of tree guys, landscape guys, lawn guys, they always see my truck and they tell me, "Oh, I'm not allergic to that." And it's like, okay, here, let's bet $1,000, roll around the back of my truck and see if you don't break out. And I've yet to have anyone take me up on that offer.
Wow. That's crazy, bro. I don't mess around with that stuff, dude. I hate poison ivy. I haven't had it, honestly, bro, in probably 20 years, when I was a kid. Because I used to be that kid running through all the woods and through, all that mess. And I haven't really had to deal too much with that. But I don't do a lot of landscaping too. And I always get nervous for my friends out there that are pruning or doing landscaping. I'm like, you better know your plants, and including poison ivy, man. Know how to identify that. How can people? What's some quick characteristics of ivy or sumac? So these guys listening in, they're just more. Of course, when you guys are listening to this right now you're gonna all be on pins and needles and freaking out, right? But because that's how I am too when I hear people talk. It's like when you get a podcast out with like a tax guy, and it's like, you don't want to get audited, and now you're thinking the whole day, I don't want to get audited, I don't want to get audited, I don't want to get audited, right? How does it work with poison ivy? Anything that you can give these guys like key indicators of what it looks like?
Absolutely. So let's start with the easiest one and the rarest one that the guys would run into, and that would be poison sumac. Poison sumac grows in a wetland swamp. So you would see, wetland plants like skunk cabbage or cattails, or some sort of dogwoods out there. You would see maybe some invasive Phragmites. You would see these wetland plants, and those are indicators that you're in the environment in which poison sumac can grow.
Okay.
Now, poison sumac is a tree, and sumacs have a unique structure to where they grow up one trunk and then they split out and create multiple trunks.
Okay.
Now, there's another type of sumac out there called staghorn sumac, and most guys driving down the road have seen this one. That tree is the one that produces a red cone of berries on top. That is not poisonous.
Okay.
But the poison sumac, that'll have, I think, 7 to 13 leaflets per leaf, per branch. And then the seeds will actually be hanging below it, and they're like a grayish white. And I always tell guys that poison sumac, the trunk of it almost looks like elephant skin. And another indicator for both poison sumac and poison ivy, on the vines or the trunk of the tree, you'll see black oil, black little splotches, I would call it. And that's the urushiol oil. Once it leaves the plant, it oxidizes, it gets hit by the sun and oxygen, and it turns black. Usually it's clear when it's within the plant. So poison ivy wise, what you're looking for, okay, this is why people have a very difficult time knowing that they're dealing with poison ivy, and that's because every single set of 3 leaves looks different. Okay. The same plant could have smooth leaves that are rounded or oval, and then it could also have leaves that are notched. Okay. And another indicator of that is poison ivy is asymmetrical. So you'll see plants, and it can be the tiniest little notch that'll make it asymmetrical. But most plants in the plant kingdom are symmetrical. So meaning you could fold the leaf over and all of the notches, all of the serrations would line up. Poison ivy does not. You could have large notches on one side and little notches on the other, and you know that you're in that realm of, okay, this is poison ivy. Now, same thing with the vine. Vine indicating is pretty unique here in Michigan because we have multiple vines that grow. Poison ivy has the finest hairs in the vine plants that we have in Michigan. So we have Virginia creeper, grapevine. There's some other invasive vines like Oriental bittersweet, and they all have their own characteristics that you look for. But poison ivy, I always tell clients that it looks like horse hair. So they could be bright orange, bright red, black, gray, but it's horsehair. It's super fine. And what those are, they're actually aerial roots. So that way, when the vine grows up on a tree and we get into a drought, those aerial roots will absorb some humidity to keep the plant alive.
Wow.
So it uses it to latch onto a tree, to grow up, to mature, to produce seeds. But it also uses it to stay alive during drought conditions. Now, another indicator that you're around poison ivy vines, if you're looking at the structure, Virginia creeper, which is a 5-leaf vine, will grow up a tree, and I always say it creates a sweater. It'll stay super tight to the trunk and super tight to the branches. Whereas poison ivy, it wants to branch out. So I've been to places where there's been dead ash trees from the emerald ash borer, and the entire tree is green. And the customer said, "Oh, that's a beautiful tree in the fall." Well, what it was all poison ivy. The vine grew up the tree, killed the tree probably, or the emerald ash borer did, and now it looks like it's this tree, but really it's all poison ivy.
Wow.
on my Instagram, you might see, I just posted a vine not that long ago that was 70 years old when I cut into it. I actually needed to go get a battery-powered Sawzall just to cut it.
I think I saw the one on Instagram. Is that the one you were sending me photos of?
I think so, yeah.
That thing was a tank, bro. It was like an 8-inch wide root or whatever. And I was like, that thing's crazy. I'm like, dude, have you gotten poison ivy by doing poison ivy? Can we just be honest, or is it a pain in the butt still?
Absolutely.
Even for you?
Absolutely. You play with fire, you're going to get bit, right? That's just a given. So what happens to me, say I go in to physically remove the poison ivy from a customer's property, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Like I said earlier, I'm in full boots, pants, long sleeves, and I wear these disposable gloves that are super thick. They're like 8 mil or 12 mil thickness. They're really thick.
Okay.
And then when I'm in there, if I'm removing something, I could get a puncture in my glove, or the glove rips and it separates from my sleeve. And I typically get a rash right around my wrist when I'm really thrashing away to pull out, contractor bags of poison ivy.
Okay.
So, I do my best to take it slow and not get it. And honestly, for how much I roll around and play in poison ivy, you'd be surprised at how little I do get it. But I'm not immune.
Yeah.
And anybody out there that thinks they're immune, you should really reevaluate your thought process, because I always tell clients that it's like climbing a ladder, the rungs of a ladder. The more times you come into contact with it, the closer you are to getting that breakout. And once you hit that point, from that point, you will always break out every time you touch it. So I've met 20-year-old clients that, they have been hospitalized. And I've met 85-year-old clients that were avid woodsmen, always hunting, always fishing, that get their first breakout at 85. So you might not be there yet, but you shouldn't think that you are immune.
Wow, that's crazy, bro. When I'm listening to this, I'm thinking like about the movie Outbreak, and like I just get all like creepy, like pins and needles. I'm like, I don't want to mess with this stuff, bro. And I'm calling in the professional. I'm calling in the cavalry, Well, dude, this is I don't know like how you can make poison ivy and mosquito control like this intelligent and fun and intriguing of conversation, but dude, you did it. Like you can tell you're passionate about it, and I'm like learning about this stuff, and I'm like, man, this is good stuff. I it's not like business and mindset and all this other mess that we talk about all day long. Like sometimes I like the strategy, the X's and O's, learning about the industry, bro. And I super respect you and what you were able to share with our audience today. If somebody wants to get started offering these services, we got about 5 minutes left here. I want to button up a couple of quick things. If people want to get started in this, do you have any good suggestions? Where they can look? And then number 2, what kind of like profits or profit margins? Is it a profitable service? And then number 3, let's wrap up with your socials and where can these guys find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you were to get started with this, I would say your first point that you need to attack is your plant education. If you don't understand plants to the degree that you know more plants than the homeowner, you will approach the homeowner and look like an idiot. Just being flat out.
Yep.
If you don't know the plants that are in the woods, the plants that are in the landscaping, things like that, you will not do well in this. So you really need to study that. Then you would move into the whole pesticide industry, what you need to do, look into certain herbicides, certain insecticides, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
As far as profitability, when I worked for the former company, we were doing pretty well and it was pretty profitable. And I know that it's profitable. We're talking some high margins, probably some of the higher margins that you've ever heard of.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mosquitoes, that's a different profit margin. I'd say that's right around 30%. But that's because I'm a solo owner op. Once I get into, hiring employees, now I'm going to probably go down a little bit to somewhere in the 16 to 20%.
Sure.
But I also, how I've priced that service is I've left room for increased prices. So there's some guys around me that are doing that for $60 an app, and then there's some guys that are doing it for $80 an app.
Okay.
And so once you build the name and you provide a quality service, you start getting more customers, and then you can make those price increases, raising your margin.
Okay. Well, now let's talk about the poison ivy. What can we look for, like an average app, average profit margin? How does that stuff work? If you don't mind me asking while we got you.
I would say you're talking a few $100s. And what I do is it covers a couple applications. Now, once you step into the realm of, say somebody has acreage, I just did a couple acre job and it was a couple grand, but that's because, it's more work, it's more herbicide, it's more time involved.
Mm-hmm.
But once you get into acreage, you really need to look at, how can one man do that service for that acreage? there's lots of tools out there. Like there's indicator dye, there's surfactants to help your herbicides go further to raise your margin. There's a lot of things to cover. But profit margin wise, I mean, you're talking quite a bit even after the technician. I won't say the number. I don't want to say the number.
Yeah.
Everybody, I'll see a swarm of poison ivy companies across America. Well, hey, good on you if you do it, but you really got to know your stuff.
Well, we were laughing. You're like, I don't want to give away every secret, like I got this good thing going on here, and I'm like, hey, I get it, bro. Like I appreciate you sharing as much as you have and as much as you did, and you're over here in mid Michigan, and you actually have a pretty large route. You even come almost down to my neck of the woods if the price is right for the poison ivy. I know you're trying to keep the mosquitoes controlled a little bit more by you, but if, like you said, if you get the bigger jobs, you can travel a little bit. And I know you were doing some larger jobs, like you just alluded to. And you're like, yeah, dude, I'll travel, but the average ticket's got to be where it makes it worth it. You know what I mean? So let me ask you this: where can people find you, man? I really appreciate the time and the conversation. If these guys want to know a little bit more about mosquito control or poison ivy control, or maybe they just got some general questions, are you available for those guys on Instagram or to DM or not? Just want to make sure where these guys can find you. If so.
Yeah, absolutely. On Instagram, you could find me at ditch_the_it_mi. And at the time, I wasn't thinking of SEO, so I didnn't put, ditch the itch, just flat out. So, but
yeah.
And then I'm trying to do YouTube, but I need people to bear with me because I live out in the country and I have a 1.6 megabyte upload speed. So you can find me at YouTube at ditch the itch, but I will not be producing regular content. It'll just be as I go, as I can. One 10-minute video takes about 36 hours out where I live. So,
yeah. Well,
it's totally different, but.
Yeah, you and I were talking about when you came over to my house because you were inquiring where the land was at, and you're like, what kind of utilities are there? And you were like, hey, make sure that there's utilities at the road so that you can hook up internet. And I'm like, yeah, of course, dude. And you go, well, don't take it for granted. You're like, because up by me, it's like 20 or 30 grand for them to run internet up to your house. And I'm like, what? You're like, yeah, dude, I'm a little bit more rural. And I was like, what are you talking about, dude? That's crazy. I'm like, the utilities won't pay for that? And you're like, no, sir. They're like, I don't think they're going to make their money back. You know what I'm saying? So
no. With one customer, 20, 30 grand, you think about how long it takes to pay that off with one guy paying it.
Oh, but, yeah.
Before we end this, Brian, I just want to tell guys out there that, there are so many niches out there that you can do in this industry. Like we didn't even, touch the surface of this. There's all these invasive species that you can take care of. There's all these invasive bugs you can take care of. There's tree injections. There's all sorts of stuff. Here in Michigan, we have probably 5 invasive species that I could count that you could have a business surrounded just by those plants alone.
So
it would be a 6-figure business.
Yeah. So don't just think lawn care. Don't just think one thing, That's really, really good, man. Like I know Caleb, he does retaining walls, but he's getting to stormwater and sewage, like stormwater damage and stormwater repairs. And he's like, we get a lot of urgent calls, and that's good money, good margins, and they pay quick. Sinkhole at the parking lot, right? And he goes, never would have thought about that just 18 months ago, and now he's got a whole nother division that he's going to build out on that. And I'm like, wow, that's interesting, man. So
these guys can branch off and create these divisions, Like the invasive species one, there's wetland invasive, there's dryland, woodland invasive. There's one right now that I'm trying to tackle that's called Oriental bittersweet. And what that'll do is that'll constrict trees, take down trees, that'll kill forests. So, that I see that everywhere in Michigan, to where a guy tomorrow could create this business, market it, and be saving forests.
Wow. That's awesome.
These homeowners could pay a few $1,000s for you to take care of their invasive species, but then you're saving them 20, 30 grand over the course of the lifetime of them living at their property, and trees coming down with a tree company coming out.
Sure.
So there's so many routes that you can go in this whole industry.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely, dude. Well, I think it's really intriguing. I appreciate you being able to bring your professional opinion and just some of the education, to be totally honest with you. We don't get a lot of that. I personally haven't been able to consume too much content about mosquito control, poison ivy control. But you know what? Hey, you live about 45 minutes from where I just bought land. And so that's really, really helpful to have you in my back neck of the woods, So now when I do get that property taken care of, I already told told Austin, like, put me on the schedule, bro. And you can crop dust my place because I do not like mosquitoes.
All right, I'll go put the deposit down on the plane tomorrow.
Yeah, well, make sure it's a Cessna, not a little Piper Matrix for $500,000 or $1 million. You know what I mean? So, no, I'm just having fun. Well, dude, hey, no, for real, we'll wrap this up here. Thanks so much for being on the show. We really appreciate your time. Again, Austin, you can find him at Ditch the Itch on Instagram. He's got a big Instagram account there and super active. So if you guys got questions, DM him. And if anything, just guys, share this podcast. There's a lot of guys that don't have a lot of education and these couple of different topics that Austin was able to cover for us. And so if you guys are enjoying the show, as we always sign off with this, leave those important 5-star ratings and reviews, and definitely share it with a lawn bro, share it with your fans and your group on Instagram, and tag both of us, and we'd love to repost it, and just let Austin know that you appreciate his time, and all the education that he poured into us selfishly or selflessly, which is really cool. So, all right, well, hey, that's it. Austin, for real, man, thanks again for being on the show. We appreciate you big time.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Brian. I really appreciate it, and I hope I help some guys out there.
Amen, dude. Absolutely. I know you did, because if it can help me, I know it can help these guys too, so we appreciate it. Well, all right, guys. Well, that's it. That's this episode of the Fullerton Unfiltered podcast. We can't wait to catch up with you guys all on the next one.
Fascinating show, guys. Hey, it's Marty, and I follow Ditch the Itch on Instagram. He's got a really cool logo for his business that you can see over there. I'm also on IG these days at MR Producer USA, Mr. Producer USA, and I'm only 34,700 followers behind Brian's Lawn Maintenance. I'm coming fast. That's me in your rearview mirror. I would love to connect with you, though. Remember to sign up for Lawntrepreneur Academy Live 2020, November 7th in Novi, Michigan. You can network with peers, learn from industry experts, and discover what it takes to hypercharge your business. Now, if the event gets canceled because of COVID, etc., Brian will refund the $179 ticket cost. Of course, you might want to talk with your bookkeeper, but many who are attending plan on writing off the cost as a business expense. I encourage you, make the investment in your future. You won't regret it. Visit LawnTrepreneurAcademy.com and reserve your place at the event now.
Thanks for taking the time to listen to the Fullerton Unfiltered podcast with Brian Fullerton. We hope you enjoyed this production. If so, please consider leaving us a 5-star review for the show. While the techniques and ideas presented here are designed to help you grow a more successful and profitable business, no one can guarantee these results for you. We want to emphasize that entrepreneurship is not easy, and the ideas presented here are just the opinions of Brian Fullerton and his respective guests. No one can guarantee success for you. That being said, we hope the ideas presented here help you and motivate you to go on out there and crush it with your own business.
Fullerton Unfiltered podcast.
Thanks for listening, and we hope to see you on the next episode.